Well, it is definitely cold, but it's been a good morning so far. I'm in Delta Junction. Got a little ways to go yet, obviously before I hit the border. And you can see as I'm passing the sign here, I'll hit Tok in 100 miles and the Canadian border in 200. And then it'll be the push on for, I believe, another 300 miles into Whitehorse today. So it's going to be a long day on the road. Got 124 miles since I started out. That includes some mileage yesterday up to the university for the ceremonial start of the southern leg. But can't complain one bit. The bike is running beautifully. Handles the weight great, but then again, I'm carrying a whole lot less weight than a 2-up rider, which I'm used to doing anyways. So it's not too bad. I'm really blown away. I'm trying not to cry right now at all the support that I've gotten so far, and that the people are behind what I'm hoping to do here, and in supporting the Soldiers Project and trying to help kind of kill the stigma surrounding PTSD, depression, and anxiety, and hopefully bring some peace to those who've lost brothers and sisters, sons, daughters, husbands, wives, mothers, fathers. For those who don't know as much about my history, I figure now's as good a time as any to maybe share some of that. So I was born in Birmingham, Alabama, but with the last name Sherman, it wasn't a great plan for us, so we moved to Michigan, where I grew up with my mother and my father. They split up when I was pretty young, and my dad made a lot of really poor life choices. He was an Air Force veteran, served during Vietnam. He was a flight line mechanic for B-52s in Thailand, and he was a man with a lot of demons. I don't know where they all came from. Some from his family, some from his upbringing, some from his own choices. But he took his own life in 2007, just after I returned from Iraq. Oh, the rain's starting to come in, as you can probably see some drops landing on the camera here. My mother's always had a difficult life, and I spent a good portion of my childhood kind of raising myself, which is why I so willingly joined the Army, to get away and kind of try and find myself. And I made choices there that I regret now. I was not as dedicated as a soldier as I wish I would have been, especially in my early career. I was a kid, didn't really know the weight of what I was doing. I served from 2001 till 2007 on active duty. I was actually in basic training on 9/11. I was re-zeroing my rifle for a second day on the range. I was not a first-time qualifier. Those of you who served will understand that bit. But I did deploy, spent 16 months in Iraq, a year up in Mosul with the 172nd Stryker Brigade Combat Team. I did mostly, even though I was an infantryman, I did mostly combat logistics support. I worked in a mayor's cell, provided close security detail, and I was a strap hanger whenever they needed some extra people for missions. But mostly I just ran night convoy security missions, making sure materials made it in and around and soldiers made it in and out for the brigade. I actually came home at the end of our 1 year for a couple of weeks before we were redeployed to Baghdad. And thankfully, Steve Stevenson, my first sergeant, was a great guy, and he listened to my pleas because I wanted back into a line unit in the worst way. And So they sent me back, but I actually got scooped up before I even made it to a line unit, and worked for then Colonel John Norris for the 4th of the 23rd Infantry. We spent 4 months in Baghdad, where I worked as part of his security detail, working with the TAC. And that was probably some of the greatest times of that part of my life. I would go back and do that again and again and again. My time was not marked by any great horrors, except for losing friends, which I think we are all familiar with. But I never resented anything I did. I loved my time in Iraq. It was the best time in my service. I was definitely not a garrison infantryman. I liked deploying. I liked doing my job. When I came back, I just figured everything was okay. I had surgery to repair my left shoulder. Began my recovery process physically, and kind of shrugged off the mental side of things, even though the VA said that I was dealing with possible traumatic brain injury from IED explosions, and that I likely suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder. I just kind of shrugged that off. And after my father killed himself, I definitely felt the pangs of depression in a way I didn't fully understand at the time. But I then worked and tried my best to kind of follow my heart and my dream and go become a police officer. So I worked at a place called Custom Canvas Alaska in Fairbanks, Alaska, and kind of did the regular after Army thing, and started off on my life. And finally in 2009 I was hired by the Fairbanks Police Department, where I worked as a patrol officer. I can't say I had a pristine career. It was certainly marked by my own difficulties. I had some personality conflicts within the department, and while I was a hard worker and I received awards, I also ruffled some feathers. And depression and finally anxiety, which I had never experienced up until then, really began to take their toll on me, and I fell apart mentally. Eventually I was found unfit for duty based on untreated post-traumatic stress disorder and my survivor's guilt, which is the specific type of PTSD I deal with mostly, where I get sad, mostly thinking about a couple of very specific guys who didn't come home. If you want to look them up, it's Staff Sergeant Mark Wall, who passed away, I say, from combat-related difficulties. He died of a heart attack, which is a sad situation, and that man belongs in Valhalla till the end of days. He's a hero, even if the Valkyries took him a little after the battles. I firmly believe in my heart that it was because of the stresses that he endured. He was too young to go for a heart attack, but yet that's what took him. And Captain Doug DeCenzo, he was my XO when I was in 2-1 Infantry, and I worked closely with him. He was a great man, and he died. He and his driver, not with 2-1, but with another unit he had moved to, in an IED explosion that destroyed his Humvee. He was a great man. They were the two closest to me that I lost the most violently. And I still think of them. Still drink to them. Still miss them. After I stopped being a police officer, or could no longer be a police officer, I continued to work as a contractor, job I was doing as a moonlighting profession while I was an officer, and I began school full-time, but I really was falling apart, and I contemplated very, very heavily taking my life. There were some very dark days in there where if it weren't for the people around me that cared about me and made me part of their family, I wouldn't be here. Those people are a huge community to me, and that's roller derby. And I know it's kind of an odd thing for a lot of people. It's a sport and it's a hobby, but it's a lot more than that. It's a community. I was first taken in by Evan McCabe and Terry Dukes with the North Pole Babes in Toyland, where I started as a referee, and then at the Fairbanks Roller Girls, where I later became the head referee and where I still officiate. But through Derby, I found a community that gave me the strength. I found the physical exercise that worked through my anxiety, and I found goals again. I found structure and the things that I missed. And anyone who's transitioned out of the service knows that you might fight that structure while you're in, but once it's gone, boy, do you miss it. And others find their communities in the Legion posts or the other veteran community groups, their churches. But for me, that was roller derby. For the people who follow roller derby who are listening to this, you'll often hear that roller derby saved my soul as a catchphrase. For me, it saved my life. And it has been the greatest use of my time since I quit being a soldier. And to quote or paraphrase, because I'm not going to mess up the quote here, Bonnie Destroyer, we all find derby at a time when we need it most, and we wreck and destroy our bodies to save our souls. Well, my body was already pretty wrecked, but it's nice to transition that pain that I felt every day, not just in my heart, but on my aches and pains in my shoulders, my back, and my knees, and transition them into soreness because I was working out with people I loved and cared about. So I find it fitting that as I'm heading south, I'm heading to Whitehorse. As the first official roller derby game I ever refereed, I was a jammer ref for the North Pole Babes in Toyland at the last home game for the Yukon Roller Girls. Geez, almost 4 years ago now. Maybe 3, somewhere between 3 and 4 years ago. And I'm on my way to Yukon Whitehorse right now, where tonight I'll referee a scrimmage. And this Saturday, I will jam ref their first home game since their last home game. So I get to start off this really monumental journey by going back to a milestone in my life that has kept me alive. So when I say I'm having trouble kind of fighting back tears right now, it's because I go full circle. And as I get messages this morning from great heroes like Troy Drebenstead about how much he wishes he was on this journey, and how many friends and veterans and supporters are reaching out to me today, I can't help but hope that what I'm doing here and what the people are helping in donating money and time and awareness to the Soldiers Project will do for others. And I hope that if you take the time to watch and listen to this video, you get to enjoy this beautiful scenery in front of you as I ride the Alaska Highway south, that you'll share some of your joy with someone who needs it. And you'll talk to someone Even if your depression, your anxiety, your post-traumatic stress, whatever you deal with, even if you're coping right now, you talking about it and shining a light on it and showing that it's okay to live with these things, you'll help someone who hasn't been able to do that. I couldn't admit that post-traumatic stress affected me or that I suffered from depression. But yet, it was and is one of the most important things I can do to talk about it. To take the time to share so that others know that it's okay. So that others don't hide in the shadows until they take their life. So I hope that you can share yours so others can live.